Frankie POULLAIN from the Darkness, and you're listening to Sonic Perspectives.
Hi everybody, and welcome to another interview of Sonic Perspectives. I'm Rodrigo Altaf, and this is a special interview for me because I've been a fan of this band since their first album was released. I'm talking today with Frankie POULLAIN, the bass player of The Darkness. Frankie, it's great to have you with us today.
Good to be here.
Yeah. You have a new album soon to be released, Easter is Cancelled, so this is always an exciting time for you, or maybe it's a concerning time for you, right? Are you excited about the new album?
Excited for sure, yeah. We certainly put a lot of time and effort into this album. It's the longest period we've ever spent in the studio, 9 months.
Oh, wow. And I understand this is your first quote-unquote concept album. Can you expand on the concept a little bit?
Sure thing. The album is called Easter is Cancelled, as you know, and it's about refusing to be cowed by the establishment, refusing to be crucified. Hence why it has Justin appearing as a muscle-bound Jesus on the cover, snapping the cross. And the other 3 band members were the 3 Marys, and we're helping him by basically attacking the Romans. And for us, the Romans represent the establishment. But it doesn't have to be about Jesus. It could be about Socrates, who fought the Greek establishment.
Okay.
It could be about, for example, Martin Luther King. Could be about Che Guevara. It's just about people who are anti-establishment and who stand up for what they believe is right against the power, corruption, and lies of the establishment.
Right. And once that cover was revealed, it didn't take long for people to say they're offended just because of how Jesus or whoever is depicted, but they thought it was Jesus, right? Does that bother you in any sense, or?
Not too much, no. I think the theme is one of empowerment in the face of adversity. So I don't think it takes too long. I can see people have a reflex. People are reflexive when their conventional attitudes are threatened. So it's important to perhaps think first and work out what the theme actually is, rather than just being offended by the appearance of something.
Yeah.
It's important. The key is the meaning of something rather than the appearance.
Of course, yeah. And the first single, Rock and Roll Deserves to Die, I think you guys seem disheartened with the current state of music, right? Tell us about what that song represents.
The song represents laying down the gauntlet to ourselves and to other bands. So it's a challenge. And the challenge is, are you going to make music which justifies the existence of rock and roll, or are you going to rehash, or are you going to create music which is corporate sounding, which is consumed by the establishment and parts of the establishment, or are you going to express yourself in a badass way, should we say?
Yeah, of course.
How many rock bands these days actually are badass, are actually provoking people to look at things in a different way?
Yeah, and I think it kind of ties in with the song Solid Gold from your previous album, right? I kind of made that connection.
Well, it's certainly much more nuanced and more musical a song. But I guess Solid Gold was quite a simplistic way of doing that. Yeah, maybe you're right there, actually. I've never thought about that before. Solid Gold, I guess, was a very rudimentary approach to the same subject as trying to work out if we're still relevant. We're asking that question of ourselves. And I think it's important that all rock bands do that. It's important to do that. It's also questioning what rock and roll is in 2019, because rock and roll changes, because rock and roll is an attitude. Whereas at the moment, if you go into a lot of rock bars, they're like museums to the past.
Absolutely, yeah.
And they all have the same. They all have the same aesthetic, the same Jack Daniels, and then guys with tattoos and crucifixes around the neck. So there's a air of convention. So what we are saying is, if it's conventional, and if it's what's rebellious about convention, if everyone's wearing a pirate earring and has a crucifix around the neck and has tattoos, is that really unconventional? That's the question.
Yeah, absolutely. Makes sense. Let's talk about the video for that song for a minute. How long did it take you guys to put on the makeup and the bald heads? I mean, you have such long hair. It must have been a pain for you, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, I guess, again, that's part of laying down the gauntlet to ourselves. We thought, what can we do in a rock video that no one's ever done before? And we thought, vanity is really a part of being a rock band. So let's really question our vanity, and let's actually make ourselves look ridiculous and actually appear bald in our video. And that was a challenge which we undertook, and we did it. And I have to say, it was a pretty tough one. It took 4 hours. They put on really this heavy grease on your hair, and they keep smoothing it down, especially for myself. Well, in fact, all of us have got long hair. It was hard for all of us, but for myself, it was really tough because I've got big afro, so it took a long time, and a lot of smoothing down and makeup, and it was 4 hours of makeup, like I say. And afterwards, it took a few days for my hair to recover because the stuff they put on your hair to make it put under the bald wig is pretty nasty stuff, So there you go. That's the sacrifice that we made. Perhaps not the sacrifice that Jesus made, but it's one step at a time.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And have you been thinking about doing a concept album for a while, or is this a new idea that came when you started writing this one, or?
Yeah, we've had it in our heads, either to do a musical or a concept album. It is something we've had in our heads, but this time actually it just developed organically because Rock and Roll Deserves to Die, the song and the title made us think about that. And then our manager in an email exchange said he was talking about this year, and he was planning ahead from last year, and he was planning ahead to the diary, and he was looking at Easter, and things started to fill up in the diary, and he said Easter is cancelled in an email.
Oh, right.
And I said, hey, that sounds like a title. That means something. What does it mean? And then a few minutes later, Justin found this animated GIF of muscle-bound Jesus snapping the cross. And from then on, we thought, okay, we've got to reenact this. And I mentioned the Pogues album, Rum, Sodomy and the Lash, which has like a classical painting which they kind of vandalize. So I thought we could take a similar approach, have something very formal, and then juxtapose it with something really irreverent and silly.
Right, cool. And another song that was revealed was Heart Explodes. It's one of my favorites of the new album, and it's almost like a rock waltz. And it has multiple storylines being developed, like it's a breakup tale, but also the difficulty to write a ballad and fear of change to some extent, right?
Yeah. Nice comments. I'm glad that you appreciated the song. I think it's a very heartfelt song, very open emotionally. The kind of song maybe that you would more associate with a female singer-songwriter than a cock rock band, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
I think it was really brave of Justin to do that, and we all contributed to that song. Rufus came up with a great drum pattern, and I helped a bit with the melody and a couple of the lyrics, and then Dan obviously came up with the musical arrangement, which is really brilliant. The shifts from major to minor, and the triumphant chorus, which is really powerful, I think.
Right, and one thing that not a lot of people seem to have pointed out, it's the first time that The Darkness releases 2 albums in a row with the same lineup. And you just mentioned like a joint contribution to a couple of the songs. Do you think that helped with the end result, or that contributed to the end result in a way, or?
Wow, that's a good observation. I didn't even realize that.
Yeah.
This is the first time we've done an album. You're the first person that's pointed that out.
See, I'm a long-time fan.
Wow, okay.
I didn't say just to say, I am a fan, man.
Jesus, that's blown my mind. That I had no idea that was the case.
Yeah.
Because Wow, so this is the first time we've done it with the same lineup twice in a row. Jesus.
Yeah.
Well, it'll be interesting to see if we can do it again. That's going to be a challenge. The next album might actually be a musical. That's what we're talking about, doing some kind of musical. Yeah, it's true. You're right. There's something symmetrical about it because Rufus is half my age.
Oh wow! I didn't know that.
So it makes the rhythm section quite symmetrical, and then there's the two brothers and the way that they balance each other out. Mm-hmm. You know, the kind of fire, the fire and ice thing. You know, so there is something. I guess there's a real sense of harmony that kind of. It's kind of suspended in a state of harmony. I think this lineup.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about the title track? What is it alluding to? I couldn't pick up the exact meaning of that song.
I think that's Justin's take on multiverse theory. And it's probably best if he explains it. I think if you go online, you can find him talking about that, about multiverse theory. It's imagining like a different reality, if different turns are taken, and how there's multiple different kind of realities can emerge according to what turn somebody takes, and almost like a choose your adventure kind of situation. So he's talking about maybe how religion would have developed if Jesus hadn't been crucified, for example. But there are many examples. Maybe in a way it's similar to Friday Night, in that it's very playful, and it's a playful ode to just a cool chick, who was fond and warm-hearted,
Oh, okay.
I mean, it makes me think of, those heavy metal girls, if they weren't there, what would the heavy metal scene be like,
Right.
It'd be pretty rough, wouldn't it? If these heavy metal girls weren't there, it would be like the 70s at those AC/DC gigs where there's no chicks there at all,
Right.
And it's just too much testosterone,
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's these girls are like gold dust, and some of them are great, they've got hearts of gold, and a lot of people in the heavy metal scene have, there's a lot of really great people that I know we play a lot of those festivals, and people, there's so many kind of really cool kind of people, really friendly, gentle kind of souls,
I see.
So I think this is looking at the female heavy metal fan, and there's a playfulness and a fun humor attached to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I noticed a quick nod to country music in Another Life, and it also reminded me of Love Is Only a Feeling, at least a little bit on the chorus. What can you tell us about that track?
That track is probably the most pop moment on the album.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't intended to be. It was intended to be something more kind of acoustic-y, maybe with strings on it, but I guess it ended up kind of shiny, like a shiny kind of pop rock kind of ballad, It's probably the most mainstream thing on the album as well, and the most pop. Okay. I think Dan did a really good job with the production. There's some great moments. There's a great guitar solo from Justin. I think the second verse is a highlight in that song. But maybe moments of theirs a little bit close to maybe Shania Twain, in the vibe.
Yeah.
But I guess we wanted to try something different. In this album, we wanted to any song that had a kind of feel to it, we wanted to take it quite extreme in that direction. That's why Choke on It is kind of punky grunge. Deck Chair is like 19th century theatre almost. It's very formal. And this song is just like a shiny pop ballad.
Yeah.
We didn't we didn't try to bring the songs together. We just the songs, if they called for it, they were right out on a limb,
Yeah, and props to Dan on the production department, because you just said it. It's not the easiest band to produce because you go so many places in one single album, right? It's people tend to look at the joke side of the darkness, but there's so much more to it, right?
Yeah, for sure. We've never been more eclectic than this album. And he was just talking, we were doing an interview this morning with Kerrang! Magazine, and he was talking about how it's not just on songs, but within one song, for example, Rock and Roll Deserves to Die, he had to come up with 3 completely different drum sounds.
Yeah.
And it took, that song in particular, it took a long time to produce and to arrange. So, exactly. There's an awful lot of work and craftsmanship goes into this.
Yeah, absolutely. And you kind of wrap things up on a hopeful note with We Are the Guitar Men. I think it's signaling that there's actually hope for rock and roll, right? At least in my view, it's a hopeful kind of ending to the album.
Yeah, I think so. And it's probably the first time, really, that we've referenced an obvious maybe the Beatles. I think, the verses in that song to me sang, if I'm allowed to say this, they feel quite McCartney-esque, that melody, that very sweet kind of melody. And it's definitely a very different sounding track, and then it goes into ELO kind of mode, Traveling Wilburys,
Yeah.
It's definitely one of the most surreal songs we've ever done, but it's also one of the most heartfelt and sincere. I don't think there's any irony in that song at all. It really is. It's a love song to the guitar,
right?
And there's nothing ironic about it. I think in almost any other band that would do that, it would be kind of jokey. But that shows you how seriously we take our instruments.
Right. And you actually already played Rock and Roll Deserve to Die and Heart Explodes live. How are they being received by the crowds?
Rock and Roll Deserves to Die. No, we haven't done Rock and Roll Deserves to Die. We did Live Till I Die.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we did Live Till I Die at a couple of the early festivals, and then we did Heart Explodes at the Ed Sheeran gigs. It was 6 shows. We played it to almost 500,000 people.
Wow!
And we were supporting Ed Sheeran. It was like 75,000 people there each show. So Heart Explodes went down really well at those gigs. It felt like it was our Radio Gaga, and all the hands in there, because it's all based on a kind of drum riff, and that really comes to the fore live. It really works live.
Yeah.
In terms of the rest of the album, we're going to play the whole album from start to finish as part of the tour.
Oh, cool.
Followed by Greatest Hits. Yeah, followed by a Greatest Hits set. But the first half of the set is going to be the album, so we have a lot of rehearsal booked in for October.
All right. And you just mentioned the run of shows with Ed Sheeran. Do you think the Eddie Sheeran fans understood what you guys are about, or were they scratching heads a little bit?
They were scratching their heads a bit. They were, but gradually I think Justin charmed them. He did a lot of talking.
Mm-hmm.
He actually played less music and did more with just Justin talking, because it was really about communicating to them and realising that what we were doing wasn't threatening. I'm not sure if it was a bit like the early days. People, they weren't sure if we were like a cabaret kind of joke or whether or not we were like a serious rock and roll band. And maybe for a lot of them, maybe it's the first rock and roll gig they'd actually been to. So it was interesting. There was a lot of young people at the front, and I think we made a lot of new fans.
Right, I hope so, because you have an interesting choice of bills sometimes, like you opened for Lady Gaga a while ago, right?
Yeah, we like to learn from people and not do the obvious thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's great. It's a real challenge being put before like an alien kind of crowd.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Sometimes in the past we've done some crazy ones. We did Disturbed in the early days, and that was very challenging because the energy at the Disturbed gig is completely different to the energy at a Darkness show. Yeah. And a lot of them were quite hostile. Oh. Somehow they thought that we were kind of taking the piss,
Yeah.
There couldn't be anything more contradictory to what they're doing than a guy in a pink and white striped catsuit screaming his head off,
Yeah.
So but you learn a lot about yourself when you do those shows, and you learn a lot about what kind of band you are. So it's a worthwhile exercise.
Absolutely. And I learned a few days that you wrote a biography, but honestly, it's hard to find here at a reasonable price. Are there any plans to print it again and perhaps update it somehow, or not really?
No, not really. No, it's not really fair to other members of the band. Really, it's only fair if everyone gets a chance to do it. You know, the thing is, everyone remembers things differently.
Okay.
And if you do something like this, even though I think it was quite tongue-in-cheek and quite silly the bit I did, it does actually offend other people who were there at the time. That's just the nature of the beast.
I see.
So it's probably best not to draw attention to it. Really.
Okay. Since I haven't read it, do you mind if I ask you how you met Justin and Dan, and when did Justin start to develop his falsetto?
I think, from what I've heard, the falsetto was something he would bring out at school in the early days of when he was in bands in his teenage years and early 20s. He would do it when he would be impersonating Deep Purple tracks. I think it's always been there, his falsetto.
Okay.
It's just a freak of nature to do with the shape of his mouth and, you know, his that kind of cavity area, you know, in his mouth and nose and his breathing chamber, you know.
Okay.
And probably, but I guess in a way it's his soul, isn't it? You know, that's how his soul expresses itself. I met Justin through Dan. I met Dan first, and I was in a couple of bands with him, and then one time, one of the bands we were in, he said, would you like to rehearse back next to where his parents live in Lowestoft? And we went there to rehearse because it was a cheap place to rehearse. And then he said, would you like to meet my brother? And we went to meet his brother, and he was playing football with his younger kids, just scoring loads of goals and celebrating wildly.
Yeah.
And he had a very childlike quality to him, and was immediately very likable and charismatic. And we talked to Dan about maybe having him, when we saw how good he was on keyboards, we thought wouldn't it be good to get this guy in on keyboards. And at first Dan said, well, any band that we're in together, I always end up sacking him from the band because he's too silly. Because he never takes it seriously. And then, so in that band, the band was called West, and in West we never actually got Justin in, but the next band I was in with Dan was called Empire.
Okay.
And in that band we actually got Justin in to play keyboards, and then he went from keyboards to being backup guitar, so he was playing keyboards and second guitar.
Interesting.
And then we ended up, and then from then on, we, Empire folded, and me, Justin, and Dan stuck together.
Okay. Well, let's talk about those years where you played under the name Empire. I think people always write about how success came overnight for The Darkness, but you played for years as Empire, right? Playing in small clubs and tiny clubs. What kind of memories do you have of that time?
Yeah, not just Empire, but also West before that.
Oh.
That was I was with Dan from the mid-90s, but I was also in bands, for the 5-10 years before that, because I'm older than those guys. So for me, it was a very long gestation period. I never actually, when the band made it, I was 35, 36. So that was a long time for me. But in terms of Empire, that was 3 years or so, 3 or 4 years. And then with The Darkness, it was also 3.5 years before we made it, because we formed in 2000. But, that's not a long time. For the average band, 3 years is normal,
Yeah.
It can easily be like 5 years or even 10 years,
Yeah. And you left the band just before the recording of One Way Ticket to Hell and Back, or maybe during the early stages of recording. Did you get to work with Roy Thomas Baker before you left, or not?
Yeah, I worked for a bit with Roy Thomas Baker and the guys. Yeah, we were in the studio together for a few months before the Fallout thing happened.
Okay.
The making of the album, the making of the album was quite slow and quite laboured, and I guess in a way, having all that time in the studio together and things going very slowly, to me it didn't really feel like a Darkness energy. And I guess also all that time that we had together in the countryside, it just brought to attention that we changed as people over the last year and a half of being famous and in the public eye. And sometimes when that happened, it kind of exaggerates the differences between you as people.
Yeah, I understand. And what do you think helped you guys get back together in 2011 and remain like as united and tight as you are these days?
I think it was a shared appetite for redemption, and to really just do it for the music this time, and not to get distracted by concerns of being famous for fame's sake. It was about always putting the music first and creating a legacy that we could look back on when we were older and actually be proud of what we've done.
I see. And one particular cameo of on one of your albums I'd like to ask you about is Ian Anderson, who played the flute on the track Cannonball. What was it like working with him? I mean, was he in the studio with you guys, or...?
No, unfortunately, that was one of the ones where we didn't even actually meet him. I think we've met him at a Classic Rock Awards ceremony before, but in terms of what happened there was we just sent out the files, and then he sent them back, and he sent us some great stuff, and then we edited it down. And his flute playing is definitely the best thing about that track, because the song wasn't actually quite good enough to get on the album. It was a bonus track, but definitely one of the best bits on that whole album is his flute playing. Because it goes from, it starts off as pastoral and romantic, and then it goes kind of jaunty, and then it kind of goes kind of weird and trippy at the end. He's just got such a broad palette to play with.
Yeah.
He really is a brilliant musician,
Yeah. And when did you start to wear those suits on stage, and where do you get them from?
Angela Bright designs the suits for us.
Oh, okay.
She's been designing Justin's on stage and off stage clothes for the last 3-4 years, and she's been doing the whole band now for about the last 2 years.
Oh, cool.
She's from Canada, and she's you can find her on Instagram, Angela Bright Designs.
Yeah. Well,
she does a great job. We're really pleased with her.
Okay. That's where I'm sitting at the moment. I'm in Toronto now, so...
Oh, wow. Okay, yeah, well, she now lives in the UK. She came over a few months ago, yeah.
Oh, okay. Cool. And did you always play with Thunderbird bass? And what are your main influences on bass?
I played the Music Man Stingray, I guess, in the very early days, and then I tried the Rickenbacker. And then as soon as I started playing the Thunderbirds in 2000, I just stuck with it. Yeah, so basically it's been almost 20 years.
What would you say are your main influences on the instrument? I remember you saying that the first album you got was Regatta de Blanc by The Police. So was Sting an influence on you in particular, on the bass department at least?
No, I'm not good enough to talk about people like Sting. I'm just basically, I'm like, I suppose, more a punky approach. I like it because it's rattly and it's awkward. And you really have to grapple with it, and it's got a bit of an ugly sound. I like all those elements, I can relate to it,
Yeah. Okay.
And it's got a delicate neck as well, I just like all the things about it. I just identify with it.
Okay. Makes sense. So going back to Easter is Cancelled, the album will be released in a few weeks now, early October, and you have European dates already announced, an Australian tour booked as well, and I understand there are talks of tour in North America already, right?
Yeah, the American dates are going to be announced quite soon. That's going to be April, May.
Oh, okay. I'm looking forward to it. You came here almost 2 years ago in late April 2018, I believe. So it'll be 2 years.
Yeah, it's going to be 2 years exactly. Yeah.
Cool. Well, bring the cow band, man. I can't wait to see you guys live.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. We're going to be tight as hell because we'll have been doing 3-4 months on the road, because we start in November,
right,
in the UK. So we should be really a well-oiled machine, hopefully, by then.
Very cool. And I saw you in Toronto 2018, and the T-shirt I bought is already shrunk and all scruffy, so it's time you drop by once again so I can get a new one.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it. I remember, actually, there was a snowstorm. It was like freezing cold.
Yeah.
Even though it was April. The last one, it was really strange weather, wasn't it?
It was, man. Quite unusual for late April to have that much snow, but still, I had a great time.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can't wait to go back there. We always have great shows in Toronto and Vancouver. Yeah. Always.
Well, Frankie, thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to seeing you live very soon, okay?
Cheers. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, man. Thank you. Okay, everyone. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed this interview with Frankie POULLAIN of The Darkness. Please follow Sonic Perspectives on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, and make sure you grab a copy of the new Darkness album, Easter is Cancelled, which comes out on October 4th. We're gonna leave you now with the first single of the album, Rock and Roll Deserve to Die. Take care and rock on.
Dressed up in the emperor's old clothes, and I'm pulling at a thread. Naked with your empty heart exposed, you will wish that you were dead. You fooled us all, more buck, less bang. But when the verdict is returned, you'll surely hang. Rock and roll, your time has finally come. I am afraid you must die. Rock and roll, your time has finally come. I am afraid you must die. Now I'm afraid you must die. Judgment is past, tied your colors to a sinking galleon's mast. Rock and roll, your time has finally come. Now I'm afraid you must die.